Hey guys, it's Tuesday. I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber.
And this is True Crime and Chill. Okay, hey all you true crime lovers. Welcome to our second episode of True Crime and Chill. It's the first Tuesday of the month, and that means...
we're covering a supernatural case.
Yeah! Huh, okay. And this week has my mind blown because we are talking about the... I always mispronounce this. The Elisa Lam case?
Yes, Elisa Lam. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I always mispronounce it because it's pronounced differently, but we're talking about the Elisa Lam case, and this case is just... it's insane.
It's so mysterious and so sad, and I really hope we can dig in and give it and her the deserving respect. But before we get started, can I ask you a question?
Depends.
Well, are you one of those people that drinks tap water?
I mean, I used to not have an issue with it, but, with kids and living in places that are kind of sketchy, the water's questionable. So we have, a filter in our fridge right now, so...
Sure. See, I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where it's pretty safe to drink the tap water. Everything's pretty clear up here. But I do like to travel, and there are definitely some places I've been where the water is just funky. Is there a place
I'm living in now?
What was that?
Is it the place I'm living in now?
So is that a place you've been where you would definitely avoid the tap water?
Oh yeah. Security Wildfield, don't drink the water here. There's a lawsuit.
A couple of places I've been that I just did not like how it tastes. Weiser, Idaho, which is where my great aunt lived. And so we used to go visit her every year. And even with the filter, it was gross. And then also Fresno,
Weezer from Weiser, Idaho.
I'm sorry?
Isn't the band Weezer from Weiser, Idaho?
I don't think so. Weiser, Idaho is a really small town, and it's where they have the International Fiddle Festival every year.
That sounds dope, actually.
And then also Fresno, California. I went down there for a couple of conventions, and we go out to eat at the restaurants, and the water they give you is tap water, and it just, I don't know, it tastes different to me.
I've heard bad things about the California tap water. So
it's kind of off. But this brings me to where our case begins. On February 19th of 2013, guests at the Cecil Hotel, or the Hotel Cecil, it's now known as the Stay on Main, but it's still in Los Angeles, and the guests had been complaining about the water pressure. There had also been complaints about the smell, the taste, and they said that when they turned the faucet on, the water came out black for a moment or two before it would come out clear. So when the hotel investigated, they found the body of a missing tourist, Elisa Lam.
Okay. What? Yeah. 2 questions. Okay, obviously. One, I understand drinking crappy water. Okay, I do. Sometimes, it's whatever. But how do you go so long without noticing the fact that it tasted weird and the fact that it would come out of the faucet black? I'm sorry, but I would have been calling, the manager, ASAP if that would have happened. And 2, how did she get in there?
First of all, the Hotel Cecil is next to Skid Row. It's a hostel. It's not exactly a high-quality hotel. It was built in the 1920s and then really felt the Depression in the 1930s and never really recovered. So it's kind of a budget hotel for tourists, a hostel. So I don't think I think it would take a lot of complaints to get them to look at the water to begin with, as sad as that sounds.
But if it's coming out black...
but haven't you been somewhere where you turn it on and it's rusty at first? I mean, I'm not saying it's okay, but okay. Well, to answer your other question, to this day, no one is 100% sure how she got there or why. So we're going to go through the timeline. Elisa Lam was born on April 30th of 1991 to immigrants from Hong Kong who owned a restaurant in Burnaby called Paul's, and that's just right outside Vancouver, Canada. And in mid-2010, Lam began a blog named Etherfields on Blogspot. And over the next 2 years, she posted pictures of models in fashionable clothing.
So she did seem to have a particular interest in fashion from around the 20s and the 30s, which would make sense as to why her favorite book was The Great Gatsby.
Elisa also posted accounts of her life, particularly her struggle with mental illness. And Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She'd been prescribed 4 medications: Wellbutrin, lamidacol, Seroquel, and Effexor to treat her disorders. And according to her family, who supposedly kept her history of mental illness a secret, she had no history of suicidal ideations or attempts. And although one report claims she had previously gone missing for a brief period. In January 2012, a blog post, 21-year-old Elisa Lam seemed sad that because of a relapse at the start of her current school term, she had to drop several classes, leaving her feeling, quote, so utterly directionless and lost, end quote. She titled her post, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life," which is a quotation from novelist Chuck Palahniuk, who, if you don't know, is the writer who wrote the novel A Fight Club. She used that quote as an epigraph for her blog. Elisa worried that her transcript would look suspicious with so many withdrawals and that it would result in her being unable to continue her studies and attend a graduate school. So a little over 2 years after Elisa had started blogging, she announced she would be abandoning her blog for another that she had started on Tumblr, Nouvelle Nouveau, and its content mostly consisted of found fashion photos and quotes and a few posts in her own words. The same Palahniuk quote was used as an epigraph. So, Alex, you're my go-to Tumblr person. I know you were using Tumblr around then, right? So what did you use it for usually?
I mean, I'm still using Tumblr now. Like, let's be honest here. So, Tumblr actually started, for some people who are listening and watching and don't really know what it is, Tumblr actually started as, it was a blogging site and stuff. And it started as a place where people could go and basically express, like, who they were, how they felt, what they did, stuff like that. A lot of people used it for photography. A lot of people use it just for aesthetic blogging, stuff like that. Probably about 2008, 2009 timeframe is when it kind of started getting taken over by like the fandoms and stuff. So Super Hulock was a huge thing that took over Tumblr and stuff. And for people who don't know, that's like Supernatural, Sherlock, and Doctor Who and stuff. And I do have to admit that I was a part of the Supernatural fandom and stuff. I am a little bit still, but ever since then, it just kind of went on more to fandoms and people who write a lot of fan fiction and stuff and write a lot of stories. Like, it's a good place to like get your art out there, basically. And it's a good place to connect and see friends and stuff. And so when I looked at Elisa's blog, her blog was very reminiscent of what Tumblr used to be and stuff. So her blog was very reminiscent of the aesthetic blogging, the photography blogging, the quotes. She had some like little fandom things here and there and stuff, but I mean, they weren't that big. Now, if you ever find mine, which I'm never gonna like purposely give mine out because y'all will see a different side of me, but like I have a lot of stuff on there. So I have a lot of stuff from like my favorite TV shows, favorite books. I have a lot of stuff that like I've written, and but you know, like it's a fandom blog. It's literally what it is. But hers was very much what the trend was at the time. Just very aesthetically pleasing. Quotes from famous authors, quotes from movies, just blogging about her life in general, because that's usually what it was used for and stuff. And so now, if you want to look at it, it's on our page, actually. Like, the link will be in our bio and stuff, in the comments and stuff. But if you want to look at it, it looks empty, but you have to go to the archive button on there and actually look at everything. And from there, you can actually see all of our posts and stuff. But it was just basically a community where you could go and be anonymous if you wanted to, too.
Right. But she did have some postings as well, some quotes from herself. You can see some fashion stuff, and then you can see sort of her ups and downs. Like, she was excited about this, but then she was sad about this. However, you could see her talking in some of the fashion posts about how she was hoping she could take a trip to California and find some specific pieces for her own wardrobe. Elisa was a student at the University of British Columbia, but she was not registered for classes for the beginning of 2013 because instead she decided to take what she described as a Western tour in California, and she went by herself. It was really obvious that Elisa liked California, and I cannot blame her. She had plans to start in San Diego, go to Los Angeles, travel to Santa Cruz, and then travel home. She had posts on her blog asking about meeting up with people she knew from online. You could also see posts on her social media from when she missed her initial flight from Vancouver to San Diego and pictures from the San Diego Zoo. So her family was wary about her traveling by herself, and I can totally relate. My parents have done the same thing. But the young student was determined to go at it alone. And as a compromise, Elisa made sure to check in with her parents every day of the trip to let them know she was safe, sometimes even more than once a day. And she even lost her.
I get that. Like I would like, I remember, I don't know if you remember when I drove from Washington to Florida and stuff. Like I would check in with you like over text message a few times a day and stuff. And I called my dad a few times and everything. Like I checked in with a few people constantly, even like I would call you if I was driving and be like, talk to you through Bluetooth, be like, hey, I'm in some county in some state and I don't know where the heck I am, but I'm here and stuff. And so like I totally get her, but I do see like her parents like worried about her traveling, especially with like, you know, California is a big state. There's a lot of stuff that's happened there. Like,
and she's only 21 and it's technically international travel. Now, the nice thing is Canada and the US are quite similar, not completely. I live right on the border. I can actually see the border of Canada from my house on a clear day, believe it or not. And so I have traveled internationally alone. If you count going to Victoria alone, traveling alone internationally, which I guess technically it is. But even the night that she lost her phone at a speakeasy, and she posted about that on the blog, the night that she lost her phone at a speakeasy didn't stop her from calling her parents at least once a day and telling them about what she had done and what her upcoming plans were.
Yeah.
So on January 26th, Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles, and she had just come by Amtrak train from San Diego, which actually I've done that train, only I got off in Anaheim. And when I went to San Diego the last time, I took the Amtrak up. Yeah. She checked into the Hotel Cecil on January 28th, 2013, near downtown's Skid Row. And Elisa was initially assigned a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor. However, her roommates complained about what the hotel's lawyer would later describe as certain odd behavior, and she was moved to a room of her own after 2 days.
What do you mean by like certain odd behavior?
That's what the report says. And I don't see anything about follow-up with them after she goes missing, which seems weird to me. But also I feel a little like I can relate. Like I always feel like I'm awkward and odd. And it's not weird for anyone who has a sort of artistic soul to be perceived as weird by some people.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you find a body in a water tank, I feel like you should be asking some questions about a little bit more, like what kind of odd behaviors? What was she saying? What was she doing? Because to some people, odd behaviors are me cracking up at the fact that you texted me a joke. Like that's an odd behavior to some people. So was it her cracking up because of something she read in a book? But
well,
I get
so I'm gonna break off and tell you a brief little story. And I don't know if I've actually told you this story. When I went to Egypt a couple of years ago, one of the things that we did was this, it was the Bedouin safari adventure. And honestly, after being in Egypt for a week and a half and doing that, it felt like the medieval times of Egypt. Like I was really disappointed. That's my own take on it. But what we did was they basically put us in the back of these old 4x4 Jeeps, riding in like benches facing in and back, and drove us out to the first location, which is where they would ride on 4x4s out in the sand. And my friend that I traveled with and I were just not interested because, I mean, we do 4x4ing out here, out where I live all the time. So it was like, I don't really care about getting on a 4-wheeler and going playing in the sand. Like that just sounds dirty and not fun to me. So while I was in the back of this van, I look over and the girl next to me, she's like, skinny and blonde and pretty and preppy. And she's got this, the tattoo of the Deathly Hallows on her arm.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I love your tattoo. And she goes, yeah. And we kind of started talking. And then it occurred to me that she didn't really speak a lot of English. So I asked her where she was from. She's like, oh, I'm from Germany. And it was a cool fandom moment for me because it was one of those, like, the fandom of Harry Potter transcends, internationally. Like that was a thing. But I tried to talk to her a little bit more. And then after that, she just like completely avoided me. Like I must have said or did something that was weird to her.
Yeah.
So and this was a hostel. It was a low cost traveling option for people in the area. So it's possible that they were international tourists who, also didn't, but she's also an international tourist. So it's possible they just had different cultures or something.
But then at the same time, if they would have interviewed them, they would have been like, oh, okay, well, the language barrier, stuff like that, that's what made it weird. Right. But if they would have interviewed them and they would have been like, nah, she was straight up chanting to the devil in our room, like that, like we got to kind of be on a same level here, because like there's different definitions.
I can't find anything else other than they were anonymous guests who refused to be, known, and that they reported odd behavior. Whether it was a manic episode from her bipolar disorder or what, I don't know that it's ever been reported.
So what happened after she checked out of the hotel?
Well, she was scheduled to check out of the Hotel Cecil on January 31st of 2013 and leave for Santa Cruz. She did not check out, however, and for the first time, her family did not hear from her. They were, of course, worried and called the Los Angeles Police Department, and her family then flew to Los Angeles to help with the search. Hotel staff said they saw Elisa that day on the 31st, and she was alone. Outside the hotel, there was a manager of a nearby bookstore. Her name was Katie Orphan, and she was the only person outside of hotel staff that reported seeing her that day. She said, quote, she was outgoing, very lively, very friendly. And Elisa was getting gifts to take home to her family. And Orphan told CNN reporters that she was, quote, talking about what book she was getting and whether or not what she was getting would be too heavy for her to carry around as she traveled, end quote. So police searched the hotel to the extent that they legally could. They searched Elisa's room, had dogs go out throughout the building, including the rooftop, but the dogs were unsuccessful in detecting her scent. Quote, but we didn't search every room, says Sergeant Rudy Lopez, as they could only do that if they had probable cause to believe a crime had been committed.
Okay, so 2 things. One, there's a person missing. So obviously there's a crime that's being committed. There's a person missing. Like,
are you sure she didn't run away? I mean, she's a 21-year-old in a foreign country.
And leave all of her stuff behind?
Yeah.
Like, and then already be talking about that day, like that same day, like talking to somebody about, oh, I'm getting this for my parents. It's like I don't know about you, but I've thought about running away in the past when I was a kid. Okay, like everybody has. But I never would. But it was a full day thing. I would sit there and I would stew on it and I would think about it. I wouldn't just, I'm gonna run away, and I would at least take my stuff with me. And right. 2, if the dogs didn't pick up her scent, why didn't they? If the dogs didn't pick up her scent, then how did she was on the roof? Did they search the roof at all? Or did they just search her room in the hotel? So if they searched the roof, then they should have found her if she was already in the water tank still. Unless it's another case of these dogs not passing these tests, and if that's what it is, then police really need to look at these dogs. Well, it's what I love dogs as much as the next person, but if they can't do their job.
No, I totally agree. But it is what the LAPD reported, that the canines didn't detect any scent in any place that they were allowed to go without reasonable, without proof of a crime or probable cause. But on February 6th, a week after Elisa had last been seen, the LAPD decided more help was needed. So flyers with her image were posted in the neighborhood and online, and it brought the case to the public's attention through the media.
See, this is something that really bugs me, especially with, you know me, I go down true crime rabbit holes a lot and stuff. And a lot of cases that I see, especially with young women, if they go missing and their families are like, no, this isn't like them. They would normally call. They would normally check in. They normally don't do. Oh, no, they're fine. They're young adults, blah, blah, blah. Give it a few days. And then, but you know what? Those few days are the days that they go missing or they die or they're just never seen again and stuff. And then it's not until a week later that police are finally like, oh, we need to take this seriously. And I think it was up till recently that people actually had to wait 24 hours to make a missing persons report. And I think that's insane. Like, if it, people who know me know that if I don't check in with them at least once every 3 or 4 days, and I usually do, then there might be something wrong. So then they call me and they're like, hey, what's going on? So it's like, I would hope that, like, they would go to the police and be like, hey, I haven't heard from her in a few days. This is what's going on, blah, 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 and everything. And just try to find me. But the fact that the police are always like, oh, well, it's fine. It's probably just a runaway, or especially because she's technically in a foreign country by herself
and
with
in a
no friends or family.
But I think that's also part of it is, I mean, Los Angeles is a major metropolitan area, right? They deal with crimes all the time. And out on Skid Row, it's honestly probably at the bottom of their list, as sad as that is.
Well, I understand that, but if you have this tourist that comes in from out of country and her parents are like, our child is missing, and you don't find her at the hotel when you guys do a half-ass search and stuff, and you don't find her anywhere else, like, obviously that's when people should be like, and I'm not saying that I have a thing against police officers. I respect our law enforcement officers to the fullest extent.
Absolutely.
I do.
I have.
However, I do feel like with a lot of cases, and we're going to bring some up, they really do drop the ball. And I'm hoping that with saying some of this, it helps people learn, helps people who are going into this kind of field, like, oh, hey, this is what not to do and stuff. So we can have more people be found and not end up like Lacey and Elisa and all of that stuff.
Yep. And that would be wonderful. So on February 15th, after another week of no sign of Elisa, the LAPD released a video of the last known sighting of her taken in one of the Cecil's elevators by a video surveillance camera on February 1st, which is the day after she was reported missing. I think it was late at night, but the video drew worldwide interest in the case due to her strange behavior and has been extensively analyzed and discussed.
Yeah, I remember because this girl went missing. Oh, gosh. Let's see. She actually went missing 2 weeks before I actually went into basic training for the military. Mm-hmm. So when they were doing all the investigations and stuff like that, I was in basic, which I was completely cut off from the world. So I didn't know that they had found her, for one. And two, I think they had found her. Yeah, because the 15th was when they released the video, and I left on the 19th. So I think I was actually gone before they even found her. And if they found her before I left, then I wouldn't have known because I was too busy getting ready to go. But I remember when this video came out, though. And because I remember I was scrolling Facebook one day, and I was like, what is this? And everybody's like, oh my God, the last sighting of this girl in this hotel. Is it haunted? And I'm sitting here like, okay. And I was like watching it, expecting to see one of those jump scares. But I remember watching it thinking, this is really weird. Like, in the clip, the camera, okay, so like the camera is in, we'll post this we'll have this in our video, and we'll post this on the website and on our website, truecrimeandchill.com. But the camera is like in the corner opposite of the floor buttons. So like when you're looking through it, you can see her, you can see the door, and you can see like the buttons for the different floors and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a little grainy. It's not really offering a view. It's like offering just basically a view of like the floor, her, and then like probably like the just right outside the door of the elevator. You're not really seeing any of like the roof or anything like that. Mm-hmm. The timestamp at the bottom is blurred and unreadable, and I really feel like they honestly did that because I'm going to be honest with you, I really don't feel like this was taken on the 1st. So that might be why it's blurred out, but that's just one of my theories.
Could be.
Because you're telling me that she's supposed to check out on the 31st and they didn't go check. And all of a sudden she's seen on this camera at like middle of the night on the 1st.
Right.
And I get it's a Skid Row thing, but you know, those kind of hotels are like, I want my money. So yeah. I'm surprised they weren't pounding on her door. Right. So, I mean, that's just one of my theories that maybe that's why it's blurred out, is because it wasn't actually taken from the 1st. It was taken, but she looks super blurry and pixelated, like her mouth does. Like it's like somebody blurred something over. Like in some portions she's not, and then some portions it's not. Some portions it is. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of like, I get it. It's a sketchy old elevator videotape, but wouldn't it all be pixelated?
Right. So let's run through the video just for our listeners. And then, like I said, like you said, it will be on our YouTube video as well, on our YouTube channel, True Crime and Chill. Mm-hmm. So at the start, Elisa enters. She's wearing a red zippered hooded sweatshirt over a gray t-shirt with black shorts and sandals. And she enters from the left and goes to the control panel. She appears to select several floors, and then she steps back into the corner on the same side as the buttons and in the back. And after a few seconds, during which the door fails to close. So she steps up to it, leans forward really quickly so her head is through the door. She looks both directions really quickly and then steps back in again quickly, backing up to the wall and then into the corner near the control panel. And the door remains open.
Yeah.
So she walks to it again and stands in the doorway, kind of leaning on the side. Suddenly, she steps out in the hall, then to her side. Back in, looking to the side, and then back out. She then steps sideways again, and for a few seconds, she is mostly invisible behind the wall. She has her back to just the outside, and the door remains open.
Yeah.
Her right arm can be seen going up to her head. And then she turns to re-enter the cab, putting both hands on the side of the door. Then she goes to the control panel, presses a lot more buttons, some of them more than once, and then returns to the wall she had come into the elevator from. Putting both hands over her ears again briefly as she walks back to the section of the wall she had been standing against before. And the door remains open. She turns to her right and begins rubbing her forearms together and then waves her hands out to the sides with palms flat and her fingers are outstretched, and she's sort of bowing forward slightly and rocking gently, and this can all be seen through the door, which remains open. And after she backs up to the wall again, she walks away to the left. And after a few more moments, and this isn't right away, it takes a few moments. The doors finally close. They then open and close a few different times because I think it's starting to visit the floors that she pressed. But the door didn't close.
Like if you look at the full video, it's a full 3-minute long video. And in all of those times, the door didn't close. And don't get me wrong, I am the first person to know about faulty elevators, okay? Side story, when I was in the military stationed down in Hawaii, I got stuck in an elevator in one of the barracks, okay? Like they had to call the fire department to come open up the elevators and get us out. And the thing is we had all made complaints about this elevator tons of times. So it's like, I get it, sometimes doors stick and all this other stuff, but Not for 3 minutes straight, and not for repeatedly pushing. And then all of a sudden she gets off and it closes.
Not even all of a sudden. It's still moments after she walked.
Yeah, so it's like a good, I think it was like a minute and a half after she had actually left the elevator that it actually closed. And I was sitting here like, again, I'm queen of faulty elevators. Technology seems to like fail around me. So I'm like, what is going on? So I do know that the site was
elevator too. And they had to call the fire department. And the fun fact, the fireman who was trying to get me out of the elevator flat out said, I got stuck in this elevator once.
Huh.
So I know what you mean.
You're like, at least I'm not alone.
It was like, that's not really making me feel better. Like
right? Oh my God.
Night, I was taking the elevator. I lived on the 5th floor of this apartment building over near the Seattle area. And after that, I took the stairs for the rest of the time that I lived in that apartment.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, no, it was, oh gosh. These barracks, I think were home 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 5 stories. And it's like, normally I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll take the stairs to like my 2nd story thing. But you know, sometimes a girl was tired. Like a girl was tired, or we get back from being out all night and I'd be like, okay, well, a girl is tired. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I mean, sometimes it's just easier. So like, but it was like a full 3 minutes of this thing not closing. So that was really weird. But I do know that this video was reposted all over the internet, including Chinese video sharing site, Youku. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Youku. Where it got 3 million views and 40,000 comments in its first 10 days. Many of the commenters finding it unsettling to watch. And honestly, if you're just watching it and not knowing who it is, you're just kind of thinking, oh, okay, so this elevator's faulty. This girl's kind of having a freak out, blah, blah, blah. But when you watch it and you know, hey, her body was found almost a month later in a water tank.
Like, not even a month later.
This is like the last known footage of her.
Right. Yes, it is. And, you know, there just is something so weird about the fact that both the door doesn't close and the way she waves her hands around and acts like she's talking to someone, though if she is, you never see who it is.
I mean, why was she pushing so many buttons? Like that was my, I have toddlers. I do. So like Bentley we'll always get into an elevator. A Bentley push. Bentley push, and he'll have to push the button, or I'll always have to stop him because he's always like this close to pushing the emergency button, and I'm like, Bentley, no! So
it's like a Christmas tree.
Like if she had a toddler with her, I would totally get all the buttons being pushed, but she literally just went in there, stared at the button, and just went bap, 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 bap. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, there is a theory that she was playing an elevator game said to cross people into alternative universes.
Okay, so I've heard about this. Okay, and before I go into any of this, okay, with some of our Supernatural episodes, we will be talking about different games and stuff. We do not condone playing these games. I'm going to tell you right now, you can look them up. You can read about them. You can, right? I don't care. Do not play these games because I don't know if you're like me where you totally believe that kind of crap is real and stuff, but like don't play these games.
We can do another episode about it later, but I can honestly tell you I have had stuff happen to me because I was dumb and invited things into my home by doing things. So you need to be careful if you decide to do things like this. Okay?
So the game that Amber and I are talking about, it's a Korean dare, and it's called the elevator game. Now, it's not just, so there are different variations of it from different countries and stuff like that, but it really originated in Korea. And so the elevator game, it went around the internet a few years ago. It kind of got big like Slender Man. It's basically a game where you enter an elevator by yourself, and that's the thing, is you have to be by yourself, otherwise it won't work. So you enter the elevator by yourself in a building with at least 10 floors. You press the buttons in a certain order. When you reach the final floor, you will be in an alternate dimension, which is the same as Earth, except it's dark because electronics don't work. There's a large red cross in the sky, and you're the only person alive. Mm-hmm. And so there are different, variations of it. So there are different variations of it where, like the 13th floor game and stuff, and or the 12th floor game, or like you pick a building with 12 floors and you hit them in a certain order, and then you have to say something. I don't know what it is because I'm not going to tell y'all. You can find that out yourself. But
one of the primary pieces, though, about
you have to be by yourself.
Is that you have to be by yourself. It has to have more than 10 floors, and on the 5th floor, a woman will get on the elevator with you. You cannot look at her. You cannot speak to her, or she's allowed to take you.
Yep. It's so much fun, guys.
When you get off, if it goes to the 10th floor, it's, again, there's a whole series. We'll have it posted to our website if you dare, truecrimeandchill.com. But if you do get off on the 10th floor, she'll ask you, where are you going? And of course you can't look at her and you can't talk to her, or she gets to take you. So a lot of people think, like, there is speculation, and we'll talk about it towards the end. But
at the end of this,
it's a supernatural thing, and it's possible that who she was talking to
was the lady. So, but with any of these, now with any of the elevator games or any of the other world games and stuff, you're always supposed to start on the 1st floor. Mm-hmm. She does not look like she's on the 1st floor, but she does look like she's pushing the buttons in the order of the dare. So we're, like we said, guys, we're going to put instructions to do this on our website. However, be smart. Like, don't be dumb, please. Because I really don't feel like talking about y'all on our next episode.
No, thank you. The mysterious case of you. No, thank you. So if you do make it there and back again, though, if you want to tell us about it, that would be great. Also on our website,
we would love to hear about it. Once you're out of the psych ward.
Yeah. Hey, we can always interview you. But on our website, we also post links to case notes and credits about this case.
So I would like to say it does deserve noting that there are a lot of people who believe the footage was tampered with. I'm one of those people. Many say that that parts of the video are slowed down and stretched to cover something up, possibly even the murderer.
And that's one of the theories that we'll touch on later. But back to our timeline, 4 days after the footage was released is when Elisa was found in the water tank. She was found naked with her clothes off, and she was still wearing her watch, and her room key was found in her clothes.
So you're telling me she just stripped down and jumped in a water tank?
The clothes were in the tank with her.
Why was she naked then?
Well, I actually have a theory. I think that she took them off so she wasn't weighed down by her wet clothing, but it's possible she took them off because she was having a manic episode or because she was raped. But it's important to say there were no signs of sexual or physical assault on her autopsy report.
Okay, but here's my thing. I have friends who have bipolar and stuff, and when they're having manic episodes, their manic episodes don't make them jump into a giant water tank, take their clothes off, and just go swimming. Like, and these were big concrete tanks, weren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Like, they're that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
It also needs to be said that there are no attached ladders or stairs to the tanks, and they are supposed to remain shut at all times. So in order to get to the roof, it has to be intentional. The staircase to the roof is locked and rigged with an alarm set to go off if anyone opens it. The hotel reports that the alarm did not go off at any point during the entire months of January or February. There are, however, 3 fire escapes that give access to the roof without setting off any alarms.
Okay, but one, the hotel could have lied about the alarms going off. Because how easy is that? Obviously, they didn't pull any kind of record showing that the alarms went off or that they didn't go off. They just took the hotel at its word. And 2, she'd been at the hotel for 3 days before she went missing? Yeah, 3 days. I mean, she would have to have actively been looking for things up to the roof just to get up there, like actively looking, and it honestly didn't seem like she was planning on doing anything like that.
Right. I absolutely agree. But that's what everyone is still trying to understand, is why she got up there and how she got up there. So let's talk about the theories. So theory 1 is that she was being tailed or stalked by someone.
So it does seem like she was out meeting people, because you know, you meet people from Tumblr and you meet people from Twitter and stuff, and you're like, oh, hey, let's meet up and everything. And, you know, we grew up in the age of don't talk to people online. But I mean, well, you kind of did. I grew like the beginning of mine was don't talk to people online. And then probably about like halfway through like high school, it was, oh, okay, whatever. Just be careful meeting up with them and stuff. So, I mean, she was out there meeting people from what she was writing online and stuff. I do know that when I was 21, I was going out, I was meeting new people, I was having fun. I was, you know, I was having fun. Like I was 21-year-old.
Right. And I was a little older before I started doing things like that. But yeah, in my partying days, I really enjoyed the nightlife, going out and meeting people. Elisa, also in her online writings, describes herself as outspoken and often says she worries about saying the wrong thing at the wrong time with how outspoken she is. She also talks about some of the guys that hit on her while she was out at bars. So it's possible that someone followed her and put her in the tank. I mean, maybe it was some guy she met who dared her to do it. I know that when I was in high school, my senior year, someone in my class bragged about going skinny dipping in my city's water supply.
You know, I went to that same high school and I lived in that same city. Ew. Mm-hmm. Ew. Mm-hmm. So it is possible, but again, her release autopsy said that she didn't seem to have any sort of foul play, meaning there was no physical or sexual assault that would seem to have happened to her. So, I mean, if it was somebody that she met out, it was obviously somebody who wasn't interested in doing anything to her like that.
Well, and one of the murder theories is that a hotel worker was responsible, which is why there's that reason that some say the security footage was tampered with.
So it would have to be somebody who knew how to tamper with security footage. And I'm going to tell you from somebody who does know electronics a little bit, that's really hard to do. Like, it's really hard to tamper with security footage. You have to have not only basic knowledge of splicing a video like that and being able to manipulate the time frame and stuff like that, but you have to have like some other in-depth knowledge about other things. And sure. It's not as easy as clip, go. It takes some time.
Sure. But also, I mean, if you remember, the date and timestamp is all blurred on the video, so they could skip around. And there's some parts where when she's waving her hands around, her fingers look kind of out, like they look really long, like oddly long. So that's where people think that it was stretched. I mean, this was 2013, so they were using digital footage. It just wasn't high quality. So honestly, tampering was not that hard to hide because everything is so grainy. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, back in and it's like, even though it was only 2013 and that was only a few years ago, crappy hotels like that, they had really bad footage. And and anything that I've seen, it always seems like last footage of somebody before they're murdered or before they disappear is really crappy footage. Yeah. Like really crappy footage. And I'm sitting here like, this happens every time. It's like, so what's the next theory? Okay. Theory 2 is that her mental illness caused a manic episode, which led to her putting herself in the water tanks.
And like I said before, you know, I have friends who are bipolar, and I have friends who have manic episodes, and I have friends who are depressed and stuff. And like I said, their manic episodes either cause them to stay in bed for days on end.
Yep.
Go on a shopping spree. Because it's an up manic episode. I think that's what you say for it. Or like they become irrationally angry.
Yep.
And stuff. And so over little things. But like I said, like none of my friends who have bipolar disorder ever feel the urge to strip naked and jump into a water tank with concrete.
Right.
Like, well, that
I've seen, I mean, I have the same experience. In fact, one of my previous jobs, I was working with people with mental disorders. And I've seen it make depression worse or cause a manic episode that is more about doing big things like planning elaborate trips or making grand gestures. Also, it's really common for people who are suffering from bipolar disorder to start feeling good on their medications, feel like they're well enough to go about without it, and then stop taking it.
So based on the report, it shows that she got her last dosage of medication on January 11th. So based on how many pills she was given to how many pills that were found in the bottles with her stuff, would kind of maybe point to the kind of mindset she was in, but I still don't see it being, let's go, drown ourselves in a water tank type of thing.
Well, and exactly. It could, though, explain the weird behavior her prior roommates described that got her moved to her own room. Also, worth noting, the last 2 photos on her Instagram were rooftop photos. So it's really possible she was just up there to snap some photos for her Insta.
So that brings me back to the police should have investigated the weird behavior. So we know what weird behavior is.
Right.
And are we sure that those photographs are from the hotel?
No, not from that hotel, from other hotels that she had been at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I saw a video, like, because you sent me the video of the water of that same rooftop. Somebody actually went up there. And honestly, when you get up onto the thing, it really looks like it's kind of hard to get into the water tanks, except there's an elevator control room that you can climb up on top of and jump down. But again, that's a lot of work. So if she was suicidal, like, the reports were saying, why didn't she just jump off the roof?
Right. And, that's just it. Why get into the tanks when it's clear there's no way out? It's positively morbid, but if she was suicidal, I'm sure she could have just jumped from the ledge. But her family said that she didn't have suicidal tendencies, and if she was up there for a while beforehand, why didn't the dogs pick up her scent?
No shade to her family, but her family also did hide her mental illness.
At first, they did. Mm-hmm.
So she may have had suicidal tendencies at first, but once they actually got her stuff evened out, maybe. But at the same time, I understand why they wouldn't want to say that to the cops, because then, hey, they would have stopped looking and stuff. Because it's just like if like a teen, there's so many cases I've seen of girls like being murdered, and they were runaways.
Yeah.
Like, their families were like, oh, they're missing. And then the police would dig a little further and be like, oh, no, you've reported them as a runaway, so we're not going to look into this. And all of a sudden, months later, this poor girl is found murdered because the police didn't take this case seriously. Yeah. So even if she did have suicidal tendencies, I do see why her parents didn't say anything. But with the dogs, let's get back to the dogs.
Yeah.
If she was in... And, we both read the autopsy report, so it really did seem like she'd been in the water for a hot minute and stuff. Like,
yeah.
And again, we're gonna have links to the autopsy report on our website and stuff. If you guys do want to read it,
and very gruesome.
It is. I really wasn't fazed by it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But again, I read that
some of the detailed descriptions were like, okay.
Yeah. But again, we're gonna have it on there and everything, so you guys can read it and stuff. But it seemed like she had been in the water for a hot minute. So if she had been in there, if she had been in the tanks when the dogs were up there searching, the dogs could have picked up on her scent. I know scent dogs who were able to pick up on some kid's scent that's 30 miles away and be able to lead you to it. Like,
right.
That's what they're trained to do. So if she was in that water tank, you would have thought they would have found her instantly.
Right.
But if she wasn't in the water tank, then where the hell was she?
Right. Well, and that's the thing is, I don't know that her family would have thought to look into that further. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of information out there on that either.
Okay, so what's the third theory?
Okay. The third theory is that she was haunted or possessed. So let's talk a little about the hotel that gives this theory its credit. The Hotel Cecil was built as a business hotel in the 1920s, and the Cecil fell on hard times during the Great Depression of the 1930s and never recaptured its original market as the downtown decayed around it in the late 20th century.
Mm-hmm. So if it was built in the 20s, I could see the appeal to her since she was really into the culture of that time frame.
Absolutely. But I don't know if she knew that several of Los Angeles's more notable murders have happened at or have connections to the hotel. It was the last place the famed Black Dahlia was said to be seen alive. In 1964, Goldie Osgood, the pigeon lady of Pershing Square, was raped and murdered in her room at the Cecil, and that's a crime that has never been solved.
We should actually look into that one. But, I mean, because 2 crimes at the same hotel, well, not just 2 crimes, but what's actually really interesting is I had heard of the Hotel Cecil plenty of times. I really had, because, the Black Dahlia, all the other stuff that's associated with it. Mm-hmm. But in 2011, actually, they had rebranded their name to Stay on Main.
Right.
And stuff. And I think they were trying to rebrand it to kind of get out of the spotlight of everything that had happened and everything. But then another death happens and you're kind of just like, well, we can't change your name again.
Right.
But that's why this case, it never really stuck with me too much, because I didn't realize that it was at the same hotel that all this stuff had happened at.
Right. So let's talk about some of the other stuff that happened. Absolutely needing to be mentioned is that serial killers Jack Unterweger and Richard Ramirez were both residing at the Hotel Cecil while actively killing. There have also been suicides, one of which killed a pedestrian at the front of the hotel. After recent renovations, it tried to market itself as a boutique hotel, but the reputation lingers. Steve Erickson is a journalist who spent a night in the hotel after Elisa's death, and he says, quote, "The Cecil will reveal to you whatever it is you're a fugitive from," end quote. And this is really just something I felt is worth noting. And I see it, and then when I was trying to show it to Alex, suddenly it wasn't there. So I may just be seeing it because I want to see it. But I feel like if you watch the footage
of us and tell us.
Yes, please. If you see it too, please tell me, because I'm starting to feel crazy, actually. But if you watch the footage of Elisa in the elevator when the doors just aren't closing, she stepped out of the elevator, and then after a couple minutes, the lighting, there's a shift in the lighting and the shadows in the elevator. And then shortly after that, the doors do close, like almost like there was something standing there, and then walks out. And then that's when the doors close.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I really wasn't one that actually saw this. But for those of you who do know me, I'm blind as a bat. So, again, we're going to have that video on there. We kind of want you guys to watch it and just like comment, be like, hey, like I saw this, or no, I didn't really see this too much and stuff, because here's my thing. Okay. there's just a lot of stuff about this that just doesn't add up, about the fact that her clothes were not only in the tank with her, but off of her. Like, you would think that a lot of people, when they commit suicide, especially when they're doing something, they try to leave things neat. If you're jumping from a ledge, most people who wear glasses will take their glasses off because they don't want to see what's coming. If you are going to shoot yourself, then you do it in the place where it's going to cause more damage, to where you die quicker and stuff. If you drown yourself, I feel like you would want that weighted stuff pulling you down. Mm-hmm. But her clothes were floating next to her in the pool, in the tank. And then another thing is the scent dog's not picking up on it. Like, I know we talked about this and stuff, but like, where was she then? Why did they not pick up on her scent? Why were the police not thinking, hey, this is odd, because we searched the rooftop with dogs and now she's all of a sudden here?
Right. But
she'd also been showing that she'd been in the tank for a bit. So did the police like lie about that, or was she moved?
Right. That's a possibility too. Although, I mean, like you said, the autopsy report sounds very clearly like she had been in the water for quite some time.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So it doesn't make any sense that she just wouldn't be there. And then you have, Richard Ramirez, who, like, he stayed in that hotel, but granted, he didn't die until, like, she could have been possessed. But, like, I've heard some theories of, like, Richard Ramirez did it. But he didn't die until June of that year. So,
he was already in jail.
Yeah.
He had been in jail
but at the same time, like, people, but I think people were thinking, like, oh, maybe, like, his ghost did it or something. And I would buy that theory. However, he didn't die until June of that year. But, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened there, like, but at the same time, I don't buy the, oh God, what is, I don't buy the suicide theory. I really don't. I don't buy the suicide theory because that's what everybody says. Everybody says, oh, well, she committed suicide. Obviously, she was unhappy. Like, she had mental illness and stuff. And I would just like to point out, just because you have mental illness does not mean you're suicidal. So that's something I would like to put out right there. But she didn't seem suicidal. She was talking about, like,
going out.
Yeah, and I get it. It happens. People could be super happy and stuff. But again, the ledge was right there. She would have had to get on top of those water towers, open up the 25-pound door, which honestly wasn't all that heavy. It's about the size of my kid. But she would have had to have gone inside, closed the door, and then waited And then you could say that she did all that, but how would she have closed the door? Because if she's in that water tank, granted, if she's in that water tank, I'm assuming there's some distance between the actual opening and the water. So if she's in that water tank, there's nothing for her to stand on to close the door. Unless it was like something that was like balanced to where like a gust of wind came and closed it shut. But then at the same time, why would she just be chilling out in a water tank?
Right. So the question I want to pose to you listeners, what happened to Elisa Lam?